In this video, I'm going to share with you the best exercises for pike and hamstring flexibility. So many people ask me about how do I get a better pike? How do I touch my toes? How do I do compression for leg lifts? All sorts of things, whether you're an athlete yourself, you're a parent of a younger athlete who is growing, or you're someone who's just trying to kind of get more flexible just because you think it's important. I'm going to share with you a couple of the things that I think are really, really helpful, but also some things that a lot of people miss that are great and really supported by research. But I find sometimes they really don't think about these things. And hopefully maybe this by giving you some exercises that are new or giving you some ideas that I think maybe you're not thinking about will help you kind of see some good progress you've been looking for. Before we dive into that video though, I really want to make sure we stop and we just pause because next week we are going to be picking the giveaway winner from the last couple months of videos. If you head down to the bottom of the comment section now, you put hashtag 24shift, and the first 24 hours of this video coming out, you will be automatically entered to win not only tickets to the 2023 Shift Symposium, our 3-day flagship event, but also you're going to be getting a free course of what you want to learn from. So we have a flexibility course, we have a strength conditioning course, we have all sorts of medical courses, whatever you want to learn about. Last year's symposium, we put that in there too as well. You can hear all those things and you get one of those free. So what you want to do is make sure you drop down hashtag 24shift. We'll go through all the last couple weeks of videos. We'll pick someone who has the most entries, then put them into a random giveaway generator, and we'll pick that. We'll announce that next week on the video. But also besides that, if you're back to the channel for the first time in a while, hit the notification bell, hit the subscription bell. Make sure you're tuning into all the new content that is coming out, again, for more chances to enter and win giveaways that are in the future, but also just to get the information that I think a lot of people are finding really, really helpful. It's all free, it's all for you, and so we want to make sure you have that in your inbox. But let's dive in right here and let's check out these exercises. All right, so number one, I do think that is time and place. Nobody has any problems with static stretching. I think many people are doing classic hamstring stretches, but I think sometimes that really leaves somebody short. Okay, so what I mean by that is that we're not actually doing these things in an active kind of dynamic way. So leg lowers are probably my favorite preferred exercise to truly work on hamstring flexibility for a couple of reasons. One, the core is involved here, right? We're keeping the core braced as we move up and down. That's an important thing we'll talk about in another section of this video, but I really want the core to be active, right? Two is that I can control how much I'm pulling or pushing, right? Hannah is holding her leg up. If she doesn't feel a stretch, she can just pull her leg a little bit more. If she feels too much of a stretch, she can just let her leg go down a little bit on this top side, or maybe use a band or a belt behind her leg. And we can adjust this to every athlete, right? Sometimes it's really hard to know whether we're truly stretching our hamstring if we just give a bunch of exercises in a static hamstring stretch, okay? So I really want to make sure I see someone's objectively making progress. The other thing that's really important here is sometimes we can adjust the leg length tension and pointing of this toe to make the nerve relax in the back of the leg. The sciatic nerve goes all the way down. We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't want to see somebody limited by tingling in the back of their leg, right? So this leg lower exercise, very easy to do. You just need the edge of something like a bed or a block. Super simple, and I find it's very, very effective to actually get dynamic hamstring mobility rather than just statically stretching for 20 to 30 seconds. I think that sometimes doesn't really get us all the way there. So 10 repetitions on each leg, 2 to 3 sets, 1 to 3 seconds on the way up and down. Twice per week is probably the starting point, but ideally we're doing this every single day. Errors that I see: 1, the core is not braced, right? We don't want to have that back arching up off the table. 2, we want to see the leg drifting straight ahead, not to the side. I don't want someone's leg flopping out towards the camera here. And 3, like I said, I want that toe to be flexed up here to slack the sciatic nerve, which is what we'll talk about in a couple seconds. Okay, so this is what I'm saying here is that if you look at the diagram of this nerve, this is the sciatic nerve. It goes all the way up from the lower back, comes down right next to where the hamstring attaches, goes all the way down the back of the leg. It splits off into a tibial branch here, down the back of the calf, flips behind the toe, goes all the way up to the top of the foot. Now what happens here is that when someone's stretching their hamstring, sometimes what happens is if their foot is flexed up and their back is arched, right, or sorry, their back is rounded quite a bit, it can pull on the sciatic nerve. And so I want to make sure somebody is doing is that they're not actually causing sciatic nerve to be the thing that's cranky. I've seen a lot of athletes, particularly hypermobile athletes, is that they actually tend to get a burning in the back of their leg and tingling before they feel a true hamstring stretch up here in the belly. So what that's telling us is that the nerve itself maybe is a little sensitive. So this is the first thing I want to say. You really want to work with a medical provider on this to screen this out and make sure it's a thing. If you just start yanking on your sciatic nerve, it can be really problematic. But I do find in some athletes that are hypermobile, the nerve itself is not moving or gliding, or the nerve is too sensitive, and that is the limiting factor for their pike or their split or their flexibility. So I do want to make sure I'm giving someone some nerve glides here. And the way we would maximally tension the nerve here is if Taylor straightened her leg and pulled her toe up towards her head and picked her head up off the table. That would really be tugging on the sciatic nerve. So what we do is we glide this back and forth. So you can see here as she straightens her leg, she's going to point her toe. And as she comes all the way to the top, she's going to come all the way back in and do the opposite. So bends the knee, toe comes up, straightens the knee, and then toe goes out. And what we're doing here is we're kind of moving the nerve up and down the leg. And oftentimes doing this a couple times per week can desensitize the nerve and make it more tolerable when we're doing pikes or hamstrings, right? Everybody probably knows that tingly, burny feeling they feel in the back of their leg if they yank on that nerve too much. And again, a lot of gymnasts I find are oftentimes limited by the nerve mobility and not so much the actual hamstring flexibility. So try to make sure you're, again, doing this with a medical provider. I don't want someone just yanking on their sciatic nerve. You also want to make sure that you're properly cleared for this and it's not going to cause more harm than good. But if you are prescribed this, couple things to look out is that you don't want to push into pain. I don't want you to be causing any of that numbness or tingling or burning stuff. You just want to kind of floss back and forth in a pain-free motion. And then you want to make sure you go really slow, right? Again, nerves don't really like to be yanked on too quick. So if you start going really fast, that could be super problematic. So nerve glides are fantastic. And I find many times hamstring flexibility, quoted as hamstring flexibility and pike flexibility, actually improves drastically when the nerve becomes desensitized. So number 3, I think that oftentimes people know the hamstring muscle itself is something we do have to work on, but they're only doing foam rolling, they're only doing stretching or the leg lowers. They're not really doing anything else at all. I think you look at the research on that, it shows that it does help increase range of motion, but it doesn't actually make the muscle length longer. So anyone who's popular on this channel knows I'm a big fan of eccentrics, and I love doing eccentrics for the hamstrings here. So Tay is doing a stiff-legged RDL. So really stiff leg bottom, 5-second lower, hold the bottom for a couple seconds, put the other foot back on the ground, and then stand all the way back up. And that is eccentrically loading the hamstring, which I find is a very, very good way to, again, desensitize the nerve if that's a little bit stiff, if that's kind of having a problem. But also it really helps us to actually increase some length over time in this range of motion. So usually I like to use dumbbells 20, 25 pounds, 5-second lower, 5-second bottom hold for 5 repetitions, 4 to 5 days per week. Okay, so I really find that this is a super effective way to keep gaining progress, not only doing passive methods. We want to make sure we're using weight. I don't want someone just doing body weight. If it's sensitive at first, maybe, but we do want to actually externally load. We want to make sure that core is super braced so that we're not getting too much of the lower back rounding. And I really want to make sure somebody pauses on the bottom of that hold there. Okay, go down, hold for 3 seconds, then come all the way back up. Okay, so RDLs are a fantastic thing to put into your routine and your warm up if you want to start seeing more progress in some of these hamstring mobility type stuff. And then 3, this is a tricky one. This is one that I think a lot of people oftentimes miss sometimes. So if somebody is in a really overarched anterior pelvic tilt down here in the bottom, remember that I said the sciatic and the hamstring muscles actually attach all the way up to the pelvis. If someone's in a really overarched posture, right, they're in a really overextended posture, it sometimes can cause pre-tension of the nerve and pre-tension of the hamstring muscle group. So if someone really just has really relaxed posture in an overextended position, it may look like they can't raise their legs up all the way, but it might be only because they're so arched. So sometimes what we really need to do is work on some hip flexor, quad, and groin soft tissue to help tuck their hips under into a posterior tilt and allow the hamstring to move more. That's what these last 2 points will be about, is kind of correcting this overarched anterior pelvic tilt. And so what I like to do for this here is just do a true quad stretch, right? So again, you can see Hannah kind of fix that in the beginning. She tucked her hips under into a posterior pelvic tilt, and now she's going to squeeze the glute and lean forward and really stretch the really stretch the hip flexor and the quad here, and also get hopefully a little bit of the anterior adductors as well. We can do a version of this where we rock ourselves out sideways if we do want to get the adductors. But by hopefully relaxing some of the soft tissue in the front and getting it to just chill and calm out, we can then posteriorly tilt more and get our leg raise to be better, or get our hips to tuck under more in a flex position of our lower back. So I often see sometimes that someone has really just kind of developed this overarched posture, and then maybe they're growing really fast, their hip flexors and their quads are very, very stiff, and sometimes they don't really have the ability to tuck that pelvis under, get some extra length through the sciatic and through the hamstring. And that's actually the root of many of their causes. So 30 to 60 seconds of foam rolling, of doing soft tissue work, of doing specific stretching to the groin and to the hip flexor. 1 to 2 seconds is probably fine here, just rocking back and forth in each tempo. And then 6 to 7 days per week. We don't want to be going super hard, right? I don't want this only happening 1 time per week. And I really want to make sure we're doing some active stuff as well to kind of back this up, right? So maybe we can also do some eccentric rear foot elevated split squats to go along with our RDLs, or maybe we're doing some hip lifts to really get the hips to open up fully. Try to make sure you're doing some active flexibility type stuff too as well. But I oftentimes find, again, this overarched pelvis position is going to be the biggest problem why somebody can't actually get their hamstring to lengthen, quote unquote, all the way. And then lastly, we're going to tuck this tied together is going to be core control. I just mentioned how if the core is really not working, it's not tucking the hips under and bracing in neutral, that could limit the hamstring going up all over their head. So sometimes athletes are really young and hypermobile. They just need to work on how to use their core in a piked position. So I really like these med ball Pikes for this, right? So you can see that core is braced here, where Taylor's kind of got her hips tucked under. She's really posteriorly tilting. And then she can work on piking up all the way and learning how to compress fully into this pike position while still keeping her core moving, right? Not in that arch position. You can see that she's a really good hips tucked under position. And again, that's lengthening the hamstrings now, but it's also allowing the core to be working together. So there's a lot of other exercises you could do. You could do tuck-ups or leg lifts if that's really what you're going for. You could do some inchworms. Those are really great too as well. But some sort of exercise that forces the core to work and brace in a neutral position, along with doing some of these hamstring type mobility exercises, it really adds in all the things together. You get dynamic hamstring motion. We're working on making sure the nerve is gliding back and forth. We're getting some really good core control, and we're also correcting for that anterior pelvic tilt or that overarched posture. So 2 sets sets of 10 of any exercise at the end of a circuit is really good. Try to make sure you're not only doing strengthening. I don't want someone just repping out leg lifts. I want them really learning how to brace and keep their core controlled while they breathe. That is what core control is. Try to make sure it transfers over exactly to what you're trying to work on, whether it's leg lifts or, again, inchworms or some sort of specific move in gymnastics or circus or things like that, and make sure it's actually worth your time. You know, you don't want to just be doing things that are really not too hard, because you're never going to see progress. You're never going to see actual strength gains. If you're somebody who is working in gymnastics, wants to learn more about hamstring stuff, flexibility for pikes and leg lifts, we have a fantastic 3-day symposium coming up very quickly here, and tickets to get your ability to get live tickets is actually closing very shortly. So on the second day, we have a full gymnastics day of men's and women's coaches. We're talking so much about jumps and leaps and active flexibility. We're talking about vault bars, beam and floor drills. The men's side has all sorts of great stuff on tumbling, floor, pommel horse, parallel bars. But on the first and third day, we're gonna have medical providers on the first day and a lot of strength conditioning coaches on the third day. So if you want 30 lectures, 30 speakers over 3 days, have instant access to all the recordings for the rest of your life, all the handouts, all the PDFs, all the Q&A stuff. We've done everything we possibly can to make this a fantastic virtual symposium where you can just sit back on your couch and soak up lots of information over the course of 3 days. So if you want to check it out, head over to shiftmovementscience.com/2023 Shift Symposium. You can lock in your tickets there as well. But also make sure that if you do want to go here, your chance to enter and win something is coming next week. You could go down to the comment section and put in #24shift and maybe be automatically picked to win a full set of tickets to the symposium along with a course of your choosing from Shift. So that's actually what you want to do, is go down, enter that #24shift in the first 24 hours. You might get picked to win, which is amazing. And then also, if you just want to do it on the way out, just make sure you hit that notification bell and subscribe to the channel so you can see all the new content we have coming out. And I hope you enjoyed this video.